Since the original launch of the Mark I Renault Clio back in the early 1990s, they've become almost unavoidable on our UK and European roads. In fact, Renault have sold nearly 16 million units of the Renault Clio. And it's no surprise, because it's always offered a really affordable way of getting into new cars. But is that still true in today's market, when we really need affordable cars more than ever? Well, hopefully that's what I'm going to find out in today's video, as well as telling you all the changes to the latest generation of Renault Clio. Hi guys, I'm Tish and welcome back to the channel Auto Social UK. If you do like new car reviews and car content, then please do go ahead and hit the subscribe button to see more videos from this channel. I really appreciate your support. So when I first saw the Renault Clio in a preview event in London, I was a little bit, well, starry-eyed. Let's say I was dazzled by the bright lights of the studio, and I didn't realise that this car hasn't changed all that much. It still sits on the same chassis, and they've just slightly tweaked the exterior and interior to make it feel fresh and current for the latest model year. But in a world where cars are getting brighter and shinier, have Renault done enough? Well, let's quickly run through the changes that they've made to the latest generation Clio. The cosmetic improvements include a more aggressive bumper design, slimmer LED headlights and a striking daytime running light signature. The rear bumper has also been redesigned for a more attitude-filled look. My favourite change is the new clear 3D rear lights. These changes give the Clio a purposeful stance, especially in the range-topping Esprit Alpine trim, which replaces the previous RS line and highlights the connection between Renault F1 team badged as Alpine. The updated Clio retains the same well-designed dashboard and uses high-grade materials, giving the cabin a sense of class and quality. Renault prioritises sustainability, using at least 60% recycled materials. The facelifted model comes with more standard features, including digital instrument cluster and upgraded touchscreen infotainment system. The screen size ranges from 7 inches to 9.3 inches in the Esprit Alpine trim. Additionally, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay can be wirelessly connected to the infotainment system. And I do think that this is where the Esprit Alpine trim makes a lot of sense. It brings a lot of life into the cabin. I love these sports seats, they feel really, really comfortable. And you get the blue stitching along the centre, you've got the Alpine badge, and you've got the lovely little French flag, so that you don't forget who makes this car. I also love the steering wheel as well, really, really soft, and you've got the red, white and blue stitching. That feels really smart. I also love the fact that you get a little bit of ambient lighting along the centre console, although there definitely could be more ambient lighting, as it gets quite dark at night, especially when you've got the dark headlining and the dark interior. I really love the fact as well that they haven't used any animal products. All of the leather is actually imitation leather rather than real leather, and you'd never know because it's all extremely soft. If you're watching this video and not planning to buy a Renault Clio, then likely you know your stuff when it comes to cars. And it won't surprise you when I tell you that the latest figures for the best-selling cars within the UK new have almost all been SUVs or crossovers. There is the Vauxhall Corsa and also the Mini hatch in there, but mostly they're higher riding vehicles, slightly larger, what we've come to expect. But what is surprising is the used data. So the best-selling used cars within the UK also included, as well as the Vauxhall Corsa and the Mini, cars like the BMW 1 Series and the Volkswagen Polo. This goes to show that people really are still after small cars. And Renault had cottoned onto that. Especially when Ford said they'd no longer be selling the Fiesta, Renault wanted a piece of the pie. So previously they said that they'd only be selling this as a slightly pricey hybrid, but now they've decided to also sell it as a cheaper petrol equivalent. So that moves me into the next section of the video. If you're looking at buying a Renault Clio, what are the specifications? As is the case with many manufacturers, Renault has streamlined its range. There are now 3 trim levels: Evolution, Techno and Esprit Alpine, making life simpler for the buyer. Prices start at just under £18,000, £1,000 less than the cheapest Vauxhall Corsa. When it comes to engine options for the Clio, customers have a pretty straightforward choice between two engines. The first is the basic 1 litre petrol. This is called the TCE 90, which is a turbocharged petrol, which delivers 95 brake horsepower, hence the name, and that goes through the front wheels and is paired together with only a 6-speed manual gearbox. The second option is the one that I'm driving, and that's a 1.6 litre E-Tech full hybrid, which offers 143 brake horsepower and comes only with a 6-speed automatic transmission. The strong hybrid bit means that it will run in electric on its own. For many people, the hybrid engine will be the attractive choice due to its combination of higher performance and higher fuel economy. This model allows for a respectable 0 to 62 mph sprint in 9.3 seconds, which may not be particularly rapid, but it's still decent. If you opt for the 1 litre TCE 90 engine, then the acceleration time actually increases to double figures with 12.2 seconds. Although this is still not considered sluggish, and it's pretty normal for the class of car. In terms of changes when it comes to driving, there haven't been any alterations to the suspension or the car's chassis. As a result, the Clio remains, well, just as enjoyable to drive as it was before, which isn't a bad thing. It has some of the best handling characteristics in its class. Additionally, the ride is still smooth and comfortable, providing a mature driving experience. It's also just stiff enough to be a little bit more engaging than perhaps something like a Citroën C3, although it's not going to be quite as composed as the mini hatch. The lack of any significant actual changes have meant that one of the downsides of the previous generation hybrid Clio is still apparent, and that's boot size. Now, the previous petrol version and also the new version gets a really decent sized boot. In fact, it's a similar size as you'll find in a Volkswagen Golf and far beats a lot of its rivals. But if you go for the hybrid model, it means that you get the batteries in the boot, and that reduces boot size to 301 litres, which kind of makes it no better than a lot of its really compact rivals, and that's a shame. There's also quite a significant boot lip as well. It would have been nice to have an adjustable boot like you get in the Volkswagen Polo. But to be honest, when it comes to cars like this, I'm sure no one's expecting huge amounts of interior space. It does feel a bit with this latest generation that they've worked hard on tweaking the exterior to make it feel fresh and modern, but they haven't actually answered any of the previous problems, like for instance that boot in the hybrid. They also still have these door handles which are built into the rear of the doors. Interestingly, Toyota have actually ditched these on their latest CHR as they don't think customers really like them. They can be a little bit difficult to access if you're slightly smaller, and children might struggle, and just they're hard to find at first. Sure, they make the body style look slightly more sporty, but is the trade-off worth it? Space in the back, like a lot of the car, remains unchanged, and that means that it can be slightly pokey, especially if you go for this Alpine Esprit trim. As you get a darker headlining, it does feel a little bit claustrophobic. The materials are also not the best back here. You've got some very scratchy doors, but that also does mean that it's easy to keep clean. There's enough space for 2 small adults in the back, as legroom and headroom is not massive, but I think for short journeys it would be absolutely fine. I just think it's a bit of a shame for this latest generation that they haven't put any charging in the back. You also don't get an armrest with cup holders, and there isn't any cup holders built into the doors like you get on the new Toyota CHR. It's just okay. What I do like about the Clio is, despite having a lot of the modern day driving aids and safety technology, things like blind spot sensors, adaptive cruise control, it's got lane assist, it's also got traffic sign recognition, none of this stuff is invasive. Even when I tip over the speed limit, of course, which I would never do, it's not bonging at me, which I've really gotten used to with a lot of new cars. You can also turn the lane assist off with a button which is just down the side of the steering wheel. All of this makes it really enjoyable to live with. What I find interesting is 5, 10 years ago, the Renault Clio was almost the go-to if you were a young person looking to buy a new car. But nowadays, it doesn't seem to be as popular, rarely making the top 10 sales figures. And why is that? Well, personally, I think it's a number of different reasons. Renault didn't always have the best reputation for reliability and their engines, so it's a shame that that's stuck with them, because nowadays, they're pretty good and they're quite reliable, and they're also extremely economical. It may also be the reason that people are just looking for something a bit more prestige and a bit more luxury. They're moving towards Audis and BMWs with the rise of the PCP, and that's a shame, because this car is now more affordable than perhaps it even was a year ago, and it's now better than ever before. But let me know, what do you think of the Renault Clio? Personally, I think it's a far better option than the Vauxhall Corsa, but perhaps doesn't have as much personality as the Mini. Pop it in the comments down below and let me know your thoughts. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. Want to see more? Hit the subscribe button. And if you wanted any more information on the Renault Clio, then you can get in contact with John Banks Renault via the description box. I really hope you've enjoyed the video, and until next time, see you later.